Okay. So, I made a promise to myself. I said I wouldn't make any more videos about superhero movies or big blockbuster action franchises, but I thought about it for a while and I realized there are enough people on YouTube who are making wonderful analysis videos about some amazing art and indie films made by artists who make the things they want to make, say things they want to say with their work, fill their work with meaning and subtext. And also, those aren't the kind of movies I watch. And after all, won't somebody think of the big movie studios? Because, I mean, if I'm not going to, who else is? Anyways, considering that the world outside of late has been very diseased, I've been spending a lot of time watching awful movies. And, you know, I hope that's a trend that will end considering I'm vaxxed. And the most recent garbage I've been watching is Michael Bay's Transformers.
Sam?
Why?
That was really awesome.
Now, I know these movies aren't good, and I don't know a single person that would even try and say that, but I hadn't seen these things since they were in theaters, and I remember having vaguely positive feelings about the first one, but I think that's because it came out when I was 9, and I have a generally high threshold for garbage cinema. I mean, I liked this movie.
I will fucking kill you.
And of course, I remember what some of the bad stuff is in those Michael Bay movies. The way that it treated Megan Fox, the racial stereotyping, the bad comedy, the outright just poor directing. But I guess that upon revisiting these things, I realized Transformers is way worse than I remember.
They just didn't understand why I didn't take the cartoon version of the robot design and just make it for the big screen. And I'm like, that's the equivalent of like the Marshmallow Man in Ghostbusters.
You know, Michael, she's 15, so you can't sit her at the bar and she can't have a drink in her hand. So his solution to that problem was to then have me dancing underneath a waterfall getting soaking wet.
Like the second movie was so complicated. You're in Egypt and you're through a wormhole and you're in Cancun and you're like, you know where you are? You don't know who's fighting who. You know, here's this animatronic elbow hitting his animatronic face, but you're so tight in on it, you don't know who it is. We weren't making a movie to make a good movie, we were making a movie to hit a date.
You really are one of the best at what you do. You're the best at what you do, but you're one of the best directors that's ever lived. It's incredible the way your stuff looks.
Now, I try not to make videos like these which are outright negative, because I don't think there's a lot of interesting critique that can come out of telling you thing is bad for half an hour or whatever. I just wanted to make a video that's more so an exploration into a franchise which I feel sorely missed the mark. I'm not even really a fan of the source material on this one. I just found myself at every turn asking, why is this in a Transformers movie? And so I'm gonna figure that out. The experience of watching these movies is confusing. You'll be finding yourself asking that question, among others, at every turn. Why was this choice made here? Why was Michael Bay chosen to be the one to do all of this? So I'm not gonna be nitpicking certain plot lines or plot holes or details or whatever. I'm merely coming at this franchise with an understanding of film and a tangential knowledge of the source material. Because I know it isn't this.
I'm changing sides, Tool Warrior Goddess. Who's your little Autobot?
Oh, you're cute.
Name's Wheelie. Yeah, say my name.
What are you allowing to happen to your foot just now?
At least he's faithful, Sam.
Yeah, well, he's faithful and he's nude and he's perverted. Can you stop?
Before we go very far into understanding why this franchise is the way it is, when its contemporaries at the time, like the burgeoning MCU or Fox's X-Men franchise, played it a little closer to the source material, black leather notwithstanding, we're gonna have to spend a little bit of time talking about Michael Bay.
It's great being back, you know? It's a great city. Transformers has traveled around the world in a lot of places, and I knew Asia was one place that this movie had to be in.
I'm sorry, but this is important stuff to know. I'm not interested in discovering his influences or tracking his career through Hollywood as an auteur because a lot of people have already done that. Rather, I'd like to lay out on the table the things that I think Michael Bay likes, what he thinks is funny, what he's interested in thematically. And I know the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of Michael Bay is... But there's more to it than that. Like, really, what does he think is funny? What are his politics? What is he interested in telling stories about? I think all of that stuff is in his films, but not through conscious intention. As far as I can gather, Michael Bay would have you think he has no thematic intention. On purpose. I mean, he's literally said as much. But that doesn't mean there aren't themes. I mean, everything has themes.
I am directly below. Enemy scrotum.
And I'm not claiming this makes him some refined, self-aware guy who just likes to have fun making movies, because let's remember, everything we've heard about this guy, he's terrible to work with on set, allegedly. I'm just saying that it tracks. Allegedly. Michael Bay got his start in Hollywood working on music videos and commercials. And that's not to say that either of those things can't be thematically rich pieces of art, the former especially, but I think it's more so clear here that Michael Bay got his start because he was good at making things look cool. Like, seriously, that's an important point to make. The only reason anything is ever in a Michael Bay movie is because he thinks it looks cool. That's why his work was usually for car companies, or clothing lines, or milk. I mean, if you look at this commercial he did for Chevy in 2004 called American Revolution, that's important. Don't forget that title. That'll be important later. It's almost indistinguishable from the work he'd be doing on Transformers only 2 years later. Fast cuts, orange color grading, a camera that sweeps and zooms all over the place, a semi-truck.
They're coming. 10 new cars and trucks. The new Chevrolets. An American Revolution.
So, let's put that down as a thing Michael Bay likes. Cars. Michael Bay thinks cars are cool, but there's another thing he really, really likes. America. Now, of course, there's probably a voice in your head going, Brad, it's a car commercial for Chevrolet. Of course there's going to be American stuff in it. But hear me out. Out of the 13 films that Michael Bay has directed, 11 of them feature American police or military in prominent roles. Now, that voice is probably also saying, yeah, of course there's military and police in those movies. He makes action movies. And I'm saying, well, no, you don't need any of that stuff to make an action movie. And then I know the voice in your head is going, that seems pretty indicative of Bush-era socio-political values in the US, especially post 9/11. And to that I say, while you are correct, a lot of that comes before 9/11. Let's look at the milk commercial again.
Random call with today's $10,000.
In fucking all of Pearl Harbor, which managed to somehow capture the essence of post 9/11 American cinema almost perfectly, despite coming out 4 months too early.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
No, I'm not coming in today. I don't know. We're gonna need some good men out there to avenge this. We'll see.
It is obvious that planning the attack began many weeks ago. During the intervening time, the Japanese government has deliberately...
Thousands of people in there, Patty. Where the hell are they?
The American people, in their righteous might, will win through to absolute victory. Because of this unprovoked, dastardly attack by Japan,
9/11 showed us what human beings are capable of. The evil, yeah, sure. But it also brought out the goodness we forgot could exist.
I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Now, you can argue he includes these stuff in his movies and his commercials because patriotism appeals to American audiences. I mean, stuff like the police and the military have been around in cinema almost since the invention of the medium. But rather, I think it's the other way around. Bay excels at this kind of imagery and was in turn chosen for this work because of his reverence for the US and its institutions. The military is shown in the way that most of America reveres it. Soldiers are valiant, courageous, and strong. Defenders of freedom who always do what's right. However, he also holds the belief that higher-ups in all organizations are incompetent and stubborn, constantly getting in the way of our patriotic heroes. Similarly, rules, regulations, and guidelines only exist to prevent the good guy from doing what's right.
Drop it. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Drop your weapon, soldier. There's an alien war going on and you're gonna shoot me?
No, we didn't ask to be here.
I'm ordering you under S7 executive jurisdiction.
S7 don't exist. Right, we don't take orders from people that don't exist.
I'm gonna count to 5.
I'm gonna count to 3.
Simmons? Yes, sir? I do what he says. Losing's really not an option for these guys.
This mindset about strong heroes being burdened by the brass and jungles of red tape bleeds over into his depictions of American policing as well. He simultaneously loves the police, but also thinks the idea of them abusing their power is very funny, and has no qualms about making the assertion that it's something they do often. Bay's second most popular franchise, Bad Boys, is pretty much only about this mindset. It's not that it's atypical for buddy cop movies to be about a couple of loose cannons who have to work outside the law to get the job done. It's just that Michael Bay thinks it's really funny when the police threaten civilians with violence.
Who the fuck are you?
Hi, Mr. Burnett. I'm Reggie.
What you doing here?
I came to take out Megan.
What?
I came to take out Megan.
How old are you?
I'm 15, Mr. Burnett.
Motherfucker, you look 30. Show me some ID.
I don't have none on me.
You don't have no idea. Get your ass up against that wall.
This scene from Bad Boys 2 is pretty emblematic of Bay's humor. It's arguably one of the most famous scenes from the entire series, and while I do think Martin Lawrence and Will Smith are genuinely funny in it, textually, it's pretty horrifying.
I just got out of jail and I ain't going back. I ain't going back. What's wrong with you? You acting all scared. You ain't never seen a gun before? Man, stop pointing the gun at the boy, man. Look, don't you disrespect me in front of company. All right, let the gun go off. You a big old, tall, ludicrous-looking motherfucker, ain't you? You rap?
No.
Move, get out the way. If I see you on the highway, get the fuck out of my way. Hey, Mike!
And he does the same thing multiple times, even in just the first Transformers.
What was that? You eyeball my piece, 50 Cent? Oh, you wanna go? Make something happen, do it. Because I promise you, I will bust you up.
You see this? This is I can do whatever I want and get away with it badge.
Right.
I'm gonna lock you up forever.
Oh, God, you know what? Don't listen to him. He's just pissy because he's got to get back to guarding the mall.
You, in the training bra, do not test me.
So, a few things to add to the list. Military, good. Police, good. People in charge of military and police, bad. Police abusing civilians, funny. And on that note, I guess it's time to ask, what else does Michael Bay think is funny?
You ever made love to a man?
No.
You want to?
I can tell that you really miss me a lot, Sam.
Look, it's not my fault, okay? I'm a
It's not
victim.
your fault.
Listen, listen, I am a victim.
Oh, you were a victim of what? Of what?
Of
A little 80-pound
molestation.
girl?
It was like getting humped in the neck by a mountain ox.
Hey.
I'm Wang. Deep Wang. deep wang. You're not getting it. Deep throat. Watergate? Talking cold to you!
Very strange English. That's why I'm not. Oh, don't. I'm gonna hit you.
I'm gonna hit you right back, son. It's my manifesto.
Fuck. Anything else?
Hey, Mudflat, what are we gonna do with this shrimp taco?
Just bump a cap in his ass, throw him in the truck, and then nobody gonna know nothing, not me.
Yeah, not in my trunk.
Yo, bumper cars? Check it out. I'm hearing you, okay? I'm right here, and I can hear you. No one's popping any caps in any asses, okay? I've had a hell of a day.
Why don't you get a haircut with your bitch ass?
Go whine to your boyfriend.
Well, so, all things considered, Paramount and Hasbro, the toy company, decided that this was the best guy to adapt their series of toy commercials for children. And Michael Bay took the job, of course, but then once he got a hold of the thing, he just pretty much said, nah, I'm gonna do my own thing instead. I think the first thing you'll notice upon revisiting these movies, or for some unfortunate reason watching them for the first time, is that above all else, they're extremely mean-spirited. And I'm not saying that movies can't be crass or raunchy, I just don't see how that fits in with Transformers. The jokes in the series play out more like they're from low-rent comedies of the mid-2000s than they do from an action movie that's meant to sell toys to children.
Hold those.
What is that?
What? I wear them when I'm in a funk. So does Giambi, Jeter. It's a baseball thing. Okay.
Now, considering these are Michael Bay films, it doesn't seem too far out of place, but again, considering that these are meant to sell toys to children, none of it really fits together. And you can make gritty movies out of things which are supposed to appeal to children. I mean, James Mangold's Logan is a perfect example of that. It's just that that movie didn't come packaged with a toy line. The only other example of something like that I can think of is...
I will fucking kill you.
That. Anyways, this isn't pearl clutching. This is me wondering how a scene like this...
Hey guys, check it out. Hey bro, that car, it's nice. Hey. So what are you guys doing here?
We're here to climb this tree.
I see that, it looks fun.
Is going to appeal to a kid who just came to see a movie about Transformers. Now, these movies were very successful with young boys and teenagers, Bay's target audience. But the problematic stuff really bubbles up to the top when you think about what these movies are supposed to be. Let's break some of those things down. If we think about how long it takes before the titular characters, the Transformers, are on screen in their full forms, that's about halfway through the movie. From a screenwriting perspective, the Transformers, as characters, don't have any real bearing on the plot until the midpoint. Then from there, I'd still call it generous to consider the Autobots or the Decepticons characters. They're more like walking, talking natural disasters. That's an important description for later, don't forget that. It doesn't matter who they are. Their personalities are interchangeable. It doesn't even matter that they have any to begin with. In fact, there are literally multiple characters in the first film alone who have different names depending on whether or not you're looking at the script or looking at the merchandise. There are multiple stories about Transformers who had their names swapped around for the sake of, I don't know, coolness. And I get it, none of this is actually consequential. I mean, we're talking about Transformers, but stick with me. When looking at the other franchises for man-children that were cropping up around the same time, I mean, who was doing it with such blatant disregard for the source material they were adapting? Yeah, alright. But at least the X-Men were the main characters of their own films, regardless of how bad they got. And I mean, they got really, really bad. But that's a video for another time. I think this approach to the characters of the Transformers is a contributing factor to the franchise's biggest criticisms, outside of even just the problematic stuff.
I just called the cops on you because this is illegal. She's a minor. We're protected by the Romeo and Juliet laws.
We dated for a little while. I was a sophomore and he was a senior. It's fine.
No, it's not fine. We've got a pre-existing juvenile foundational relationship. Statute 2705-3.
What? Texas statute? That a real law?
Yep.
Ugh. Let's talk about filmmaking for a second. Use that degree. The action is almost incomprehensible. The camera is shaky, and the design of these characters doesn't lend your eyes a place to focus on, ever. The Transformers themselves are a confusing mishmash of moving parts and spinning electronics. When they get wrapped in a grapple, you might as well put a giant Looney Tunes dust cloud over the action. It'd be just as legible. Hell, you can hardly discern where their faces are when these things are standing still. From a design standpoint, there's no way an audience could connect with these things on an emotional level, let alone sit through an entire film where they're supposed to be carrying the plot. The idea of these movies being about Transformers was dead from the start. So then you have to ask, what are these things actually about? Well, let's break down the next two movies. Also, I'm not really going to get into the fourth and fifth movies here because the fourth movie is like...
Texas statute?
Yeah, and I'm not going to watch that much Transformers. The second movie actually does try to spend some time with the Transformers. It's definitely the most Transformer-centric out of the original trilogy, but again, we spend a lot of time with Sam and his parents dealing with the fact that he's going off to college and he can't take his car for some reason, but there is a good deal of the Transformers interacting with other characters and being more central to the plot overall, so it was sort of a step in the right direction. The emotional through line of that movie, though, is that Shia LaBeouf won't tell Megan Fox that he loves her, and then he just sort of does at the end. It has nothing to do with his relationship to Bumblebee or Optimus Prime. He just sort of does. Saving the world, and to a greater extent, the conflict between the Autobots and the Decepticons is not the point here. It could be any disaster, or world-ending threat, or attack on an American naval base in December 1941. The third movie, though, basically doesn't have any Transformers in it at all. Or at least, it feels that way. Like we've established here, the emotional weight of these stories has been rested with the human characters. And in this, Sam and the Autobots are not working together anymore, which makes the A-plot of the movie, Sam trying to find a job and make a new life for himself post-college, seem very separate from whatever it is the Transformers are doing. We get a lot of Sam bumbling his way through a new relationship to a new character that almost inexplicably replaces Megan Fox, and of course we get a lot of not cool jokes about that too.
You know, Sam, I don't know about moving in with this chick. What if she dumps us like the last girl?
She was mean. You like her.
Us guys gotta stick together.
It's especially not cool when you consider what we allegedly know about Michael Bay, the way he allegedly treats people on set, and allegedly why she quit working on those movies. Allegedly.
I wrote the script all the way up until we started shooting for the Michaela Baines character.
I had not seen Megan for about 8 months or so since Transformers 2, and when I saw her, she just didn't look like Michaela. It was just, you know, I guess Hollywood sometimes has a way of casting a spell on women that they have to change their look, change how their appearance, I guess, to satisfy something. I'm not sure.
I had just turned 15 and I was an extra in Bad Boys 2.
Really?
And yeah, they were shooting this club scene and they brought me in and I was wearing a Stars and Stripes bikini and a red cowboy hat and like 6-inch heels. And he approved it and they said, you know, Michael, she's 15 so you can't sit her at the bar and she can't have a drink in her hand. So his solution to that problem was to then have me dancing underneath a waterfall getting soaking wet.
With the audition, it was a serious audition. It was, she did multiple auditions in New York.
Michael sent me a text message saying, you should really go to the audition for Transformers. And
She was mean. You like her.
Us guys gotta stick together.
Anyways, Sam can't find a job and he's threatened by his girlfriend's relationship with her boss. And that's kind of the crux of almost the first half of the entire movie. And the second half is just Sam and a bunch of army guys sneaking into a city which is under attack to try and save the girlfriend without any Transformers. Like, they seriously go into the climax of that movie without any fucking Transformers. What feels like 12 hours of runtime in this movie is dedicated to John Malkovich giving his weird performance as Sam's boss, who has this whole thing about colored floors and how certain colored items aren't allowed on the wrong floor, but that joke doesn't really get any payoff either. And then Ken Jeong is there, and he's like a conspiracy guy, and like this happens.
Calm down. Easy, Sam.
What are you looking at? Yo, dog. Are you up in my shit? Who are you working for? Stare down, you and me. Guess I won.
And I know it seems like I'm spending a lot of time on this, but again, What the fuck does any of this have to do with fucking Transformers? I don't know if it's a budgetary thing or if Michael Bay isn't good enough to come up with any set pieces for the Transformers to be in, but basically the third movie was my entire inspiration for making this video. It highlights every issue I've outlined so far. I mentioned how this movie is about Sam trying to find his place in the world after college, and as someone who is a recent college graduate who has no idea what the fuck they're gonna do with their life other than this, I get how you could make a thematic parallel between that and what Sam is feeling without the Autobots around, without being needed to save the world. But that doesn't really get resolved either because the movie ends literally 10 seconds after this happens.
Who would you be without me, Prime? Time to find out.
You see why I had to betray you. You didn't betray me. You betrayed yourself.
No, Optimus!
I love you.
I love you.
But the day will never come that we forsake this planet and its people.
Do you feel cold and lost?
There's no ending there. I mean, sure, the bad guy dies, but Michael Bay spends 2.5 hours setting up how bad Shia LaBeouf's life is post-college, and all he does at the end is tell his girlfriend that he loves her, which is something he was already doing at the beginning of the movie. He doesn't get a job, he doesn't find purpose, he doesn't find a real reason for being outside of the Transformers or his girlfriend, things he was already in no real danger of losing from the outset. Not that any of those things are prerequisites for being happy in life, but these are the things we're told he wants. These are the things we're told our protagonist needs to achieve in the story. Sure, his parents put a lot of pressure on him to get a job in the film's first act, but he's also very insistent about feeling like he wants to be worth something to his girlfriend. A girlfriend who, I might add, is equally insistent about loving him no matter what, regardless of if he has a job. And it's not like the movie ends with Sam finding value in being himself or feeling okay with his current station in life and realizing that he's got a long way to go or something. None of that happens. There's no time for that. Because literally minutes after the main villain is killed, we get hit with... Now, I get it, that voice in your head is coming back and saying, Brad, you're getting pretty worked up over the fact that Transformers 3 doesn't resolve itself thematically. And you're right. But also, I'm asking, what does any of that have to do with Transformers? And if none of it really does, why the fuck is it in the movie? Especially if you're not gonna finish the fucking movie. Instead, we spend more time here than ever, looking at cool cars, knocking over buildings, ogling supermodels, thanking the troops, and laughing at rape jokes. This is Michael Bay unhinged for 3 hours, and it's the worst of them all, because he tries the least here to hide it. In his other films like Bad Boys, The Rock, or Pearl Harbor, Bay is actually able to integrate his signature elements, because those are his movies. Michael Bay didn't just make whatever movies he wanted with Transformers. He knew that his style wasn't going to work. Instead, he opted to use somebody else's. Do you remember about 3 unhinged rants ago when I said,
walking, talking natural disasters?
Good, I'm sure you did, because this is what I was setting up. The reason why these movies feel so unfocused and we spend so much time with random characters and subplots is because Michael Bay isn't making Michael Bay movies. He's making disaster movies. A very specific kind of disaster movie, which isn't a Michael Bay movie. And Armageddon doesn't count for reasons we'll get into. These are Roland Emmerich movies. Remember, this isn't a video about Michael Bay. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here. For the uninitiated, Roland Emmerich is to 90s Hollywood what Michael Bay is today. He's known for bombastic action and over-the-top destruction. He loves America and the military. His characters all talk fast, yet the dialogue is dense and tightly packed. His scripts follow the standard studio formula almost to a T. He is the definition of a blockbuster Hollywood director, much like Michael Bay. From Independence Day to Godzilla to The Patriot and even 2012, these two share a lot stylistically and thematically. But much like Bay's films all have their own distinct characteristics, Roland Emmerich's generally follow a pretty well-known structure. Let's look at Independence Day, arguably his most famous film. Now, when I say Emmerich's disaster movies follow a very specific structure, I'm not talking only about the studio's structure for storytelling. You know, 3 acts, exciting incident, midpoint, big gloom, climax, that kind of shit. You know, screenwriting 101 type stuff. Rather, I'm talking about a type of story that Roland Emmerich employs very often, which just so happens to fit within that structure. So, Independence Day. Multiple groups of characters in different parts of the world. Some of them are civilian, others are military, and the last being in government or also military, but a much higher rank than the others. A force outside of human control comes to Earth and plans to ultimately destroy it. However, the civilian group unintentionally stumbles upon the key to fight back / stopping the attack. The military guys try to fight the attackers. Those in government scramble to find a way to stop them. Some things blow up, and the stakes get a lot higher, just in time for the second act. Yada yada yada. Through a series of intense and nail-biting events, all of the storylines converge, and our characters eventually meet up just in time for the third act. Our civilian characters and our military characters, with the assistance from our government characters, are able to team up and destroy the threat. Now, I don't know if you realize what I'm doing here, but they're the same movie, and Michael Bay did it 3 times in a row. The only difference is that Roland Emmerich really likes to implement a ticking clock into his movies, whether that be the impending end of the world on December 21st, 2012, or a literal countdown clock to the extermination of the human race, or ice that chases you down a hallway, but that's just classic screenwriter shit, baby. And old Rolly's gotta get paid. Michael Bay's Armageddon doesn't fit into this pattern because it's actually character-driven. The disaster doesn't happen until the climax, and even then, they prevent it, like they've been training to do the whole film.
I asked Michael why it was easier to train oil drillers to become astronauts than it was to train astronauts to become oil drillers, and he told me to shut the fuck up. So that was the end of that talk. He was like, you know, Ben, just shut up, okay? You know, this is a real plan, all right? I was like, you mean it's a real plan at NASA to train oil drillers? He was like, just shut your mouth.
In something like Independence Day, the characters don't really grow or learn much. They're merely there to react and save the day. Sure, they have goals and wants, which they achieve, but they don't really change as people in order to attain them. And the same is basically true of Transformers. Sam Witwicky is a weird, nerdy guy who wants to date Megan Fox. He doesn't really change anything about himself or get better at anything to impress her, he's just himself, and isn't that sweet? But that's where you see the sort of Michael Bay glaze on Roland Emmerich's sweet treats. Sam doesn't really grow, yet we focus on him rather than the disaster itself and how people react to it. So, as you can see, there's 2 styles of filmmaking going on here, neither of which really work all that well with the source material. It's one filmmaker badly aping another. It's why things here feel so unfocused. It's why I've become consumed with trying to understand the motivations behind it, wanting to piece together what a version of these movies might look like if somebody actually cared. I don't know if you pick up what I'm doing, but I'm implying that that's exactly what happened.
It's time to catch the vibes, give me the crazy dap, give me the high five or the low hand slap. If you can't find a jam, you better check the map, and if you don't comprehend, well, you shouldn't have took a nap. It's good to be an MC, tempt me with the track. I'll eat a beef for dinner, eat a loop for a snack. I don't smoke Sensi and I don't smoke crack. Now watch me drop a bomb on the whack, step back. Listen to the mission while I'm dissing all the squares. Ask permission for admission, cause nobody else compares. As for details on the females, I got them in pairs. I'm pimping while you simping ghetto limping in my wares. Nice on my feet, kick a seat through the right or the left or the left. Prime mama kicking slick. You thought that I was wet, money grip, I got a trick. Another name for Richard is Dick, so get off mine. So get off mine. So get off mine. You won't you get off mine?
Rapper Travis Knight is the son of billionaire Nike founder Phil Knight. He's also an animator and CEO at Laika, an animation studio here in Portland, which is also owned by Phil Knight. I'm sorry, Travis, that's not what this video is about. Go Vikes. Anyways, after working on and producing multiple films with Laika, Travis Knight was given the opportunity to helm a new entry in the Transformers franchise for Hasbro and Paramount when the last Michael Bay installment was received poorly. So ding dong, the witch is dead, but all we really care about was whether or not that Transformers movie was any good. And it actually kind of was. Bumblebee is actually a really fun movie that I don't have many concerns with as far as the content goes. I think almost every issue I brought up with the Michael Bay films is rectified here. The emotional stakes of the story don't only affect the human characters, but also the Transformers as well. Or really, I should say, Transformer, because there's only one, which is also refreshing because the action in this movie is legible and well directed. The new Transformer designs also lend to that feeling because not only are these characters closer to the source material, they're also easier to identify with on an emotional level. And when they move or fight, you can actually tell what the fuck is going on. I think the story is also really fun. It's simple, but it's not 3 hours long. It's essentially just E.T., but I don't think that's a problem here. It works. Again, I don't know a lot about the source material, but what we see here seems a lot closer to what I do know. And most importantly, we can connect with the human and Transformer characters way better than we ever could have with Michael Bay doing Roland Emmerich. The human characters, speaking of, actually have arcs. Instead of Michael Bay presenting us with characters who act one way and then at the end of the film act another way, and we just sort of nod and go, yes, that is character development. These human characters being relatable and showing growth over the course of the story are also indicative of what I think is Bumblebee's greatest strength, and something I hope the franchise holds on to as it moves forward. Unlike the movies that came before it, this film isn't mean-spirited. 40 minutes of its runtime aren't dedicated to making jokes about how sexy a 16-year-old is, or about police brutality, sexual assault, man-ass black people, or anything else Michael Bay thinks is funny. The main characters of Bumblebee are around the same age as those in Bay's trilogy, and it isn't hard to see the differences in the ways that their relationships are portrayed, or more critically, the differences in the ways that the female lead is presented. I mean, it's sort of wild for this franchise that Bumblebee has a female protagonist to begin with, and that's not even considering how differently she's treated and characterized when compared to Megan Fox in the first two Bay films. Then, like I just mentioned, the romance between Haley Steinfeld and Lyndon Borg Jr.'s character is far more entertaining to watch than Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox's ever was. Not to mention, it's grounded. They actually act like 16-year-olds, rather than whatever this was.
A high-rise double pump carburetor, that's pretty impressive, Sam.
Double pump?
It squirts the fuel in so you can go faster.
Oh. I like to go faster.
I know it's strange to say that it's revolutionary for a franchise to stop sexualizing a 16-year-old, but that's sort of my whole point here. It isn't revolutionary, but they made a 4-quadrant film. It can be liked by children, adults, boys, girls, non-binary people. That is to say, everyone, even those outside of Michael Bay's target audience. And yeah, I guess you could raise the criticism that all Travis Knight did here was make a Marvel movie, but I think that this is far more in line with something like this.
Try to keep me from taking the ball.
All right, Spike. Am I drooling correctly?
The word is dribbling, Optimus.
Then this
Can you stop?
ever was. Nepotism aside, Travis Knight is skilled at making films for kids. And his stop-motion background gives him a lot of experience with making animated characters work. Bumblebee conveys emotion and is easy to empathize with, even though he doesn't really hardly say a single line throughout the entire film. Bumblebee losing his voice is one of the few creative choices from the Bay films that I think works really, really well. And Chili T understands why the scenes where Shia LaBeouf and Bumblebee bickering or running from danger were the most interesting things in the first film, because they were really the only scenes where the relationship between Bumblebee and Shia LaBeouf were central to the plot. The setup for the first Transformers movie is, what if my first car turned out to be a robot? But it abandons that premise very quickly halfway through. And then again, what don't those movies abandon thematically? Travis Knight's Bumblebee follows through on that promise. Michael Bay likes cars, and so the first Transformers movie is a movie about your first car. It's what Sam wants. It's why Megan Fox is inexplicably the daughter of a mechanic. Sam sees a nice car as his ticket to a better life. It's the focus of the first 10 minutes of that movie. And when he gets a junky old Camaro, you expect him to learn to appreciate the things he has and his life for what it is. That much like Sam, the car might seem unimpressive to most, but once you get to know him/it, there's more than meets the eye. But obviously that's not what happens, because it turns into a beautiful brand new version of itself after Shia LaBeouf complains enough. reverse. In Travis Knight's story, written by Christina Hodson, by the way, Haley Steinfeld's Charlie also sees Bumblebee as a ticket to a newer, better life, even though he's a piece of junk. Beat for beat, it's almost the same character arc. However, Knight and Hodson actually realize that this arc should have been the emotional core of the film, and they follow through on it. The difference here being that rather than wanting to be cool and popular, Charlie wants to use Bumblebee as an escape from a life she can't accept. One where her family has to move on from the death of her father, she's alienated from her family, and refuses to see her mother's means of grieving as valid or correct. Of course, after her adventure with Bumblebee, she realizes that moving on is complicated and looks different for everybody. And much like the revelation that Optimus Prime has in the first film, or that Bumblebee has in this one, there's much more to people than meets the eye. The Transformers franchise is one that will forever be defined by the choices that Michael Bay made. No matter how emotionally heartfelt or actually well done the stories of future entries in the franchise are, nothing will ever be as iconic as Megan Fox leaning over the hood of that car. And that's a shame. But it's also a series which is so marred by racism, sexism, and unintelligible action that those elements are inseparable from the brand at this point. And it is that way because Michael Bay made those movies. But they're also indicative of a time where movies for man-children like Transformers just weren't treated with the same amount of respect as they are today. There's a lot that can be said for the imperialistic, quasi-fascistic, and ever-patriarchal nature of modern superhero films, which is where I think the Transformer franchise fits the best, but those films aren't being engaged with by larger and larger audiences than ever before for no reason. The people at the helm of these franchises, despite predominantly remaining straight and white and male, have begun to see the value in telling stories which are more valuable and thematically meaningful than those that were being made even just 15 years ago. Creators with more mindful artistic sensibilities are being given the keys to these multi-billion-dollar franchises, and I think it's evident the effect that can have on a public opinion, even with just a single film like Bumblebee. I guess too long didn't watch What's Wrong with Transformers? Why isn't it as good as I remember? Well, I guess it's just that Michael Bay fucking sucked.
Do you feel cold?